You're on.
Welcome, everyone. We're on week 7 of our Lassoed by Marriage book club, and we are talking with Gina Welborn tonight, and our story is called All's Fair, and she's joining us, I believe, from Oklahoma, but I'll let her do the introductions of herself, and we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Breidenbach coming to you from Montana, and I want to introduce to you my friend Gina Welborn. But in the meantime, I'm going to let you know also that my friend Kathleen, who's also in our Lassoed by Marriage romance collection, is with us tonight. She's going to be with us this week. So here we are introducing Gina, and I want to tell you a little bit about her. Gina has quite a few children, and Gina, I'm going to have you, go mouse down 1 on your settings because you're disappearing on me.
Oh, not
and and her husband is a pastor, and she has been in some really fun events with him, doing some Corvette clubs and traveling around and having fun with that. And I've been able to go stay at her house with her and her children and had a really, really good time. And I think she's a very funny person, and it comes out in her story. And I'm just really thrilled to introduce to you a very good friend of mine, Mrs. Gina Welborn. And I'm going to give you the screen now, Gina.
Okay. Hello. I'm Gina Welborn, and can everybody see me, hear me fine? Yes? Okay, good. I'm one of the authors on Lassoed by Marriage, and I'm quite happy to say that Kathleen and Rose stopped me from being the last name. Usually I'm the last one on there. So yay, Kathleen and Rose, they're my heroes. A couple of months ago, I have 5 kids. The oldest one is 21. He is graduating from Oklahoma Baptist University this coming May, and then I have a 18-year-old. He's graduating from high school, and then a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And you know what? She's going to tell me I should tell you that she's 9, and now I'm bundling my children's ages. This is so sad. But I do have 5 of them, so I know that. And I haven't lost any of them except for once at Disney World, but we found her, so she was fine. She was just lost in Scandinavia. And if anybody goes to Scandinavia, you would understand why you get lost there. But a few months ago, I was at my youngest's school, and we were talking about writing and where do you get the idea, because they'd read a book in school about a little boy who wanted to write a book. So I had the opportunity to go to the school and speak to these 130 third graders about being an author. And one of the questions that I kept getting asked over again was, where did you come up with an idea? How do you come up with ideas how to write? So I thought I'd begin with telling you about how back in the summer of 2014, Becky Germany, put out a call for stories for three book collections like this, 9 in 1. One was for Oregon Trail, and my story idea was brilliant, and it didn't get chosen, but alas, oh well. And then the second story was for the Most Eligible Bachelor collection, which mine was chosen in there, and I knew exactly. I wrote my little blurb in about 30 seconds because I had that story. I thought I've been wanting to tell the Bachelor TV show in a story for too many years that I just don't want to confess to, because that means I've been watching the show for that many years, and so anyway, so I wanted to put all of the things that I loved about the show, but also some things that I absolutely despised about the show, into a story, because it was what is the true about love. And so that's what was my Most Eligible Bachelor story. Well, then the third proposal that collection that Becky was looking for was one on marriage of convenience. And my writing partner, Becca Whittam, she had an idea. She's like, Gina, you've got to come up with an idea for this marriage of convenience. And I said, absolutely, positively not. I hate marriage of convenience stories. And she said, no, you can come up with something. And I said, no, you don't understand me. Absolutely not. I don't like marriage of convenience stories. I've never found one that I've enjoyed. They just, and she said, I challenge you to come up with an idea and just we were in Starbucks, and she said 30 minutes. And I said, okay, fine. I will show you that I cannot come up with one, that there's nothing that's going to interest me, and I will have only wasted 30 minutes. So I set the timer on my phone, and she said, well, what idea do you have? And I said, nothing. And so she's tried to brainstorm. What about this? What if this? What if that? And I said, boring, cliched, don't want to do it, hate it, terrible idea. I don't want to, no, nothing. So after 20 minutes of achieving nothing, I said to her, okay, if I was going to write a marriage of convenience story, it would basically be the idea where you have two families that hate each other. And the reason they get married is to save their families from whatever. They're not doing it for themselves. It doesn't benefit either one of them. It has to be for their families. And from there, we came up with this basic idea of this Hatfield McCoy, Romeo and Juliet, where I said, okay, it starts off with this mud fight in the middle of the street, and they get thrown in jail, and they have no choice but to get married, or they're all going to stay in jail. And so at that point, that was in about 10 minutes, we ended up coming up with what amounted to the basic idea of the story. And I didn't want to write a marriage of convenience story, and I even told Becca, I said, I don't want to see how Becky's going to choose it. Well, guess what? Becky didn't choose it. Her marriage of convenience stories, that collection, I don't remember what it was titled. Kathleen probably would know. But Becky had enough other stories that had that concept of two people being thrown together, kind of out of their control. And so that's where she came up with the Lassoed by marriage, where you just don't really have a choice, and you're just stuck in this marriage situation, and how do you make it work? And so that's how the story came to be, and that's generally how most of the times any stories that I come up with, it all starts off usually Becca and I are sitting in Starbucks, and like, we need a story. Okay, well, what if? And then we just go from there. So that's my stories, and that's how I got into writing this one and into this collection, which I'm very honored because I have several good friends that are in this collection. And so I don't think I did my 15 minutes.
It's okay. But I have to say, Gina, I'm so glad
to answer questions.
I'm so glad you told us that, because everybody was asking, how did the idea for this book come to be? And I was like, I could only give them sketchy answers. We went through all these people to get to you to get the full answer.
And especially because there was a testament truly of how many authors that wanted to write for Barber and wanted to write this. They had these marriage of convenience stories that ended up taking those and then having so many extra of the stories that Becky loved, and she didn't want to lose those stories, so she put those in it. Now, she did have another collections that she was looking for stories for. There was the Courageous Brides. I know Amy mentioned that. I didn't have a story for that one, because the only idea I had for a Courageous Bride was, I thought, well, maybe if the girl did the most courageous thing is she lied for this guy because he asked her to lie for him, and it's a really big lie. I mean, she took credit for doing something that he did, and I thought, yeah, I'm not sure how I can make that work in a Christian fiction that people would find relatable. So I didn't do Courageous Brides, but I think that's how Amy's story got into the collection.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's how hers did too. Yeah. So, ladies, let's go ahead into some question and answer. And I think what will happen is more of the story and the ideas will come out for Gina to speak more with us as we ask her some questions.
Is my bandwidth good? Do I need to increase it? Decrease it?
I think you're okay for the moment.
Okay.
Do you all have any questions for Gina?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that about this type of story being done before, because that's what I thought at the beginning of the book too. You know, like Romeo and Juliet and Hatfield and McCoy and stuff. But I really love the story, and I love the ending where he goes to New Orleans to study the eardrum surgical procedures. And I just wondered, from that whole ear issue with Coral being such a big part of the story, where did you come up with that? Personal experience or just a random idea? Or?
Well, I knew there needed to be some type of reason for her to have animosity towards Jack, and it needed to be something that was personal to her because she hated the feud. So just to say, well, I hate you because your family hates you and that's what we've been taught, I mean, that wasn't enough. And so I realized to give her something, it needed to be personal. It needed to really hurt. It needed to be one of those wounds that scars us deep, and that you know, it's there, and we make those vows, those things that I'm never going to do this, or I am, because we don't want to be hurt again. And so she needed that depth of pain, and so I was trying to think of something that would work, and just the idea just popped in my brain one day while I was driving down the road trying to ignore my children yelling at each other in the car about something silly or not silly. And so I got home and I just did a bunch of research real quick about deafness, and because I didn't want her to be fully deaf, because as a writer it's harder to integrate that to the story when you have a character who is completely blind or completely deaf, because how are you going to convey that sensory details in that character's point of view? And so I just dealt with the partial deafness and just did research based on that. In fact, the information at the end in the epilogue about that surgeon in New Orleans, he was an actual surgeon. I found that in the American Medical Journal. I did that research trying to find where could Jack go to learn about ear surgeries and what were being done, and that was a place where they were a hospital where they were training doctors to do surgeries on the eardrum and experimenting and trying to help with that issue.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. What other thoughts or questions do y'all have? Go ahead.
Who is Sophie?
Oh, the end. She's another little girl that I had them pick two. I don't know why. I just had another one. You know, probably because I had an idea. I know what it was. Whenever I'm writing a story, I always think about secondary characters and think, could this person ever be the main character in a future novel? And so I thought, well, instead of just having one little girl, what if they actually adopted two? I think that's who we're talking about. Yeah. So she's just a random little character that I thought, oh, if I write about Graceland's story, then she needs to have a sister. So future heroine, that's all. That's who she is.
I have a question for you. I remember, now Gina and I have brainstormed several books together and several different collections together. But I don't know if you remember, while you were writing this, one of your kids actually had a really bad ear infection. Do you remember that?
Oh, no. You know what? There are times I've been sick this past month, and I just look back and I think, I don't even remember. I just finished a manuscript, and I look back, I can find entire chapters that I think, I don't remember writing that. So then when I was thinking about, because I was watching Amy's video earlier today, because I thought, well, I have to catch up on all of them. And so I was watching Amy's video, and one of the things that she talked about how was you write a book, when it comes out for the readers to read, it's a whole year since you wrote that book. So I had to think,
a few more cents.
what's going on in my life?
What'd you say?
So
I said she wrote a few more cents.
Yeah.
that's true. Now, if you want to talk about the story I just finished today, I can tell you everything about that.
Well, I love the way you portrayed that heroine in that story, because it's very close to me. I've actually had a lot of those problems and actually wear hearing aids because of ear infections. And so you nailed it. I don't think I ever told you that.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
You heard it here, folks.
Well, as a historical writer, it's taking that information and having to say, how can I put that in a historical context that is plausible, but yet in a manner that the people in that time period, they don't know the things that we know now. So, the things that, for example, nowadays, if they would have given Coral an antibiotic, she probably would have never lost her hearing, because that infection is what damaged that eardrum.
Wow. That, to me, that's amazing. Things can work together like that. We use the word coincidental, but in this case, where Kathleen is one of the authors in the collection saying, yeah, that's accurate, I find that really providential. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yay!
So what other questions and thoughts do you all have?
Sorry, we're a couple of them came a little bit after you had introduced Kathleen. So there was me. Who is that lady down there? So,
okay, this is Kathleen, and she's coming next week to talk about her story. Oh, I love that, Gina. That was good. That's why I'm such a boy. And this is Gina Welborn, and she's talking about her story tonight. And this lady is Breidenbach, and the cat is Muse. So, hi all.
Hello.
So this is also, just in case people joining us late in the Google Hangout, this is the Lassoed by Marriage romance collection book, and there are 9 authors with 9 novellas, and we actually did not write these stories together. We got what you would call hired or contracted to write these stories individually, and then we are finding out about each other's stories more or less after the fact. So it's kind of fun for us to do these videos and to learn about each other as well. A lot of us know each other, but not all of us did. And some of us are multi-published, and like you saw, there was a couple of authors who this was their brand new novella, Angela Bell and Rebecca Jepson. So it's really fun to see the mix and how authors come together and are connected into these different stories. And so Gina, she's in the process of, are you in the process of building a house as well? Or preparing?
We did. We lived in Virginia for 10 years, and then 3 years ago, before this summer, we moved back to southwest Oklahoma to be near his parents, well, his dad, because his mother had passed away, and my parents. And so we're living basically out in the country. In fact, I had to come to my church to do this video call because our internet out there is so terrible that we wouldn't see me at all. And so I'm here at my church, and we're in our process of looking at building a house and dealing with all of that. And I have to say, it's already more stressful in dealing at a house than it is in writing a book. Because at least when you're writing a book, you got your own ideas. You don't really have to listen to other people. I mean, it's always nice to listen to other people, like your critique partner. I know several of the other authors had mentioned how they brainstorm with their husband. Well, my brainstorming with my husband is, hey, honey, I'm thinking about writing this story in which this girl proposes to a guy on leap year day. Okay, that's great. Any suggestions? Nope, I'm sure you'll do wonderful. So he's he's very supportive, but when it comes to brainstorming, no, not him. And so I have a brainstorming partner, Becca Whittam, who just recently, she moved, well, not recently, goodness, it must be last year. She just deserted me and moved to Alaska. I know, it's terrible. It's terrible. I finally find a friend in my life, I mean, who is a close friend, who I can be the person with the issues. She's the normal one. I can be the person with the issues, and she moved to Alaska. Really?
Who are you going to go to Starbucks with now and get your ideas for your books?
You know what? I sit at home and call her and say, well, actually, you know, this last story that I just finished writing, the one I told you about, the leap year day proposal, my editor, who I also write for Forget Me Not Romances, it's a small digital press, Christian publisher, and so what happened was I have a contract for a story that was in the American State Flower series. Each story is set in a particular state, and the flower, that state flower, has to have it has to be in the title, and however you can work it into the story, that's how you do. So I was sitting here working on this story it's for a different one for her called Love Sporting Chance, and that's the series, and all of a sudden she said, Gina, when are you going to write that state flower story, the sunflower one? And I said, I'm going to write that in April because it's due May, so I'll write it in April. And she said, it's due in February 1st. Oops. And I said, but that's 10 days away. And she said, I've been trying to tell you that for the last 3 weeks. And I said, no, you haven't. And she said, go check our Facebook conversation. So I did. She might have been right. So I proceeded to, I got most of it written in 10 days, but then we had to deal with my husband's grandmother's estate sale, and then I got sick. But I finally finished that story on Friday, and it's now up on Amazon, available for purchase. It's called Six Little Sunflowers, and it's set in Wichita, Kansas, and it begins at the beginning. What brings the couple together is the fact that my heroine, Felicie, proposes to the hero, Carpenter, on leap year day because she needs a free dress. And the tradition is, if you propose on leap year day and he says no, he's got to buy you a dress. And so she needs a dress. Actually, she needed 3, so she kind of proposed to 3 guys, but that's here nor there, because only one said yes, but it was an accident. And now they're having to get married.
I'm going to bust in here for something, though, because I knew about her 10-day problem because I was having the same problem, and we actually did a Google Hangout, a private Google Hangout, and brainstormed together. And my book got extended because of the same type of thing. I got sick, I had the surgery, blah, blah, blah. But the comedy was that we were working on my brainstorming for my book. And so that's the one that's about to come out. And Gina was one of my definitely a brainstorming partner on that major brainstorming. So,
You know, that was a story that afterwards we were in the middle of brainstorming it, and I was looking at my notes because it's stuff I'd written down, and I thought to myself, oh, that is such a good idea. Why did I give that to Angie? And then my next thought was, technically that wasn't your idea, that was Angie's idea, and you just said, ooh, that's a good idea. But still, I should have said, oh, that's a terrible idea.
and then turn around and write it, right?
Yeah.
So what other thoughts and questions?
We have a couple more.
Okay.
Gina has one.
Okay, first of all, you just did about the title on that. Six little sunflowers?
Oh, yes. Angie, I didn't get that question exactly.
I think the question was, what was the exact title?
6 little sunflowers. So
Okay.
6 little sunflower.
Okay.
I put it up on the sidebar, and hopefully you can see it over there.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a story that was supposed to be 20,000 words and ended up being 30,000 because I got into it and thought, two chapters from the end and thought, oh, I need to write a new chapter before that. And then I need to write a new one. So I ended up adding like 3 or 4 chapters to the story. Oops.
Was there any particular inspiration for the characters in this story?
Oh, we can show your Pinterest characters.
Yes. Well, I do a Pinterest board. There are some authors that I know who love to use Pinterest as a means of promoting their book. Well, for me, Pinterest it's really about taking that and taking pictures for my story, that storyboarding, and creating it from the beginning. Here's the characters. Usually, I begin with characters and what they look like. But for some reason, this time, I had some research that I had done in Kansas, just some things about orchards and that, because I did not realize in my research how many orchards were in Kansas at the turn of the century, and in that late 1800s. And then, of course, we had the Dust Bowl, which just did horrible things to the Kansas topsoil. But there were so many orchards, and so I build my story based upon here. I'm going to find who is somebody that I can visualize as an actor, what my hero looks like, and then what my heroine looks like. And but besides, like if there's any specific person, I can't see in any real life there's somebody who inspires those characters. I mean, just visually, there's characters that I guess Andy's showing them. That's the visual of them. Oh, he's so hot. Although he was terrible in Pan. He was terrible in Pan. I don't know how it's possible he could be so bad in Pan. Just anyway.
Where does Anna Lucchese? What shows has she been in? I don't even recognize her.
She's an actress. I don't know what she's been in. It's been, honestly, I was going to even look that up, but I found her pictures in some young actresses website, and I thought, ooh, that's a good one. That's what Coral would look like.
That's really nice. I'm going to show you, this is her Pinterest board, and you can go in and see a lot of, she had the antique Irish crochet lace gloves and the green parasol in the story, and so you can go through and see even more and get more realistic with the story for fun. And here's what she imagined Hiram Kent looked like.
Yeah, he's hot. I should have saved him for a hero in a different book. So maybe I'm going to have to write about him because he's hot. I shouldn't say I'm married. But.
And then here's Coral's older brother, Gil, what she imagined he looks like. And the fun thing of this is that you can go through and see what inspired her as she wrote this story. And then I'm going to show you, this is how to find her Pinterest page. Pinterest.com/Gina Welborn. And there's one L in her last name. And then I'm going to show your website if you don't mind. Okay. This is what Gina's website looks like. And that way you can find it. And it is GinaWelborn.com. WELBORN. Okay. And I'm going to bring it back over to the ladies. And go ahead and ask any more questions.
Was there something in particular about this era that interested you or made you choose that time in history?
You know, I love that time period, that early 1900s, because we've got automobiles, electric automobiles, gas automobiles. People are moving around. They're not so relying just on horse and buggy, which take forever to get somewhere. There's also the trains that are moving in addition, because they've spread out everywhere. I love the clothes of that time period. Back then, dressing was an art form. I mean, you know, like we take and decorate our house. I mean, that's what they did. Dressing was that art form. Nowadays, we don't dress. We just put clothes on. And so I love that whole, although I hate corsets, and I'm glad we don't have those. But so there was just that beauty of the clothing and that gentlemanly behavior, that you know, the etiquette that we had back then, is gallantry. And so I love that time period. And it's also becoming a more popular time period because we have shows like Downton Abbey, which is a little bit later than my story, but still. So yeah. And horses kind of smell. I mean, they're cute. But they kind of smell, and then when you have to ride them all the time, you're just kind of like, yeah.
I wanted to ask one other thing. In the story, when the Judge Swayze goes to the jail, and you know, it kind of insists that somebody has to get married from each family. I was wondering if that was going to go any farther. You know, if like we were going to get a glimpse into his mind, what he was trying to do. You know, did he set that up on purpose, or you know, were you going to go any place else with that? Or was that just to make the story work that way?
You know, it was one of those things that, in fact, several of my critique partners, beta readers, when they read that, even my editor, they all questioned, you know, oh, so he was doing this to manipulate to get them together. And the objective wasn't, you know, it wasn't a manipulation thing. I tried to establish in there that the judge is a good and honorable guy, and he's going to uphold the law. So to sit and to do something like that, to say something, it becomes a manipulative form, and it's actually against the law because he put them in a situation where they were under duress and having to marry, and which again, you know, I had to spend a lot of time reading about the legal aspects of that just to make sure that, you know, they're married, yeah, they're married, and they were under duress, so they have a legal opening to have that annulment. And so I wanted to have that in there to establish, one, the judge is an honorable man, and that's why when Mr. McKinney says, you know, hey, the judge is a good, honorable guy. He's not going to do anything that's shady. And then two, the fact that the judge, you know, to establish, well, even Jack thought that the judge, his comment was just kind of a flippantly said thing, you know, because there are times when we're all in situations that we're just so frustrated that we sit and say something, and then in hindsight we sit there and say, oh, yeah, I really probably shouldn't have said that. And that's that situation is, oh, we have no picture for me. Okay, let me try this. Does this help me? Is this help me at all, Angie?
I see you, Carol. Sue, I'm sorry. I'm going to suggest that you take your bandwidth down a notch.
Okay. Oh, okay, Sue.
You have been on the recording the whole time, so you're fine.
Okay. So I wanted his his motivation to be completely honorable, and I'm going to do the right thing, so that when he ended up telling Jack, hey, you have an opportunity here. You can get an annulment if you don't want that. If you don't want to marry her, you have an opening, or you can just say, all right, this is the decision we made. So then the burden was placed upon Jack. It's not I have no choice in this matter. I thought I had no choice at that time, and now I have a decision. Do I fix the thing that I did wrong, or it's obviously not what Coral wants, or, you know, where do I put, you know, her needs and wants and my needs and wants and doing the right thing? So, oh, still no picture of me.
Oh, we lost you.
Sorry, we can hear you really well. Can you hear us?
Let me try. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good.
So the basic it really came down to is I wanted the judge to be a good guy, who just kind of, oops, I shouldn't have said that. You know, and that's the situation he's in.
It was the first time in any of the books that they actually could get out of it. Like every other time they got married, they were married. Like, so
Right.
It was kind of interesting that they could get out of it.
Well, that was the whole legal aspect of it, that I spent countless books looking through research documents, legal documents back in that time period to find out if you know, what are the grounds of an annulment, not a divorce, because what's the grounds of an annulment, because that was one of the things I think, honestly, it's why I hate, I shouldn't probably say hate, but I dislike marriage of convenience stories. Because there's this, okay, well, we're going to get married because it's convenient for us, but don't worry, we're going to get an annulment. And I hope I'm not, I hope, I haven't read everybody's story, so I'm like, oh, this doesn't mean, I hope don't anybody use that. But that's the idea. It's like, oh, okay, well, we have this annulment hanging out there that we can still do that, but if you just, I thought, I don't want to have that hanging over their head. Well, let's just stay together for a while until we accomplish this, and then we can get an annulment. I just wanted to face that head on. Let's deal with it and then make them choose now, not 3 months from now, not once they get to Oregon, but let's them choose now, before we save the farm, are we going to stay together or are we not? And so I wanted to do that differently than the normal marriage of convenience annulment added element.
I think there's another issue too, that nowadays marriage is try it on, and if you don't like it, exchange it. And I think that we think that that's an only modern thing, but I think marriage has always been a struggle through the centuries and through the generations. And so it's interesting, in your story you're able to bring that out and say, hey, wait, there's always been these, possibilities. And it's a wonderful thing when a story can support that you need to stay married,
Right. That was like in the scene that Jack has with Mr. McKinney. His wife is dying, which I actually knew a Mr. McKinney who at this time, his wife was dying. And so that was that aspect of that story, that those were real people that I knew. And so I wanted him to have that moment where Mr. McKinney says to Jack, listen, she might not want, she doesn't want to marry you now, doesn't want to be married to you now, but in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, she might not want to be married to you then either. Because let's face it, there are people we know, in our own lives, that we get married, we're in love, we think everything's hunky-dory. 5, 10 years, 15 years later, goodness, 20 years later, that's where I'm at, 22 years later. And I'm not saying I'm not one thing. I'm saying, we get to those points that we sit and think, oh my goodness, this man is driving me insane. He still, after 25 years of marriage, can't put toilet paper rolled back on the toilet thing, or he's now gone out and bought himself another Corvette without telling me he was going to buy one, and intentionally letting me think that he was buying a 1973 one, and he bought a 2013. I'm not from a personal experience or anything. I'm just using an example. But But we all have those moments that we sit and think, why did I marry this man? He is, and then we sit and think, okay, what? Marriage is a commitment, and we both have to work on it. We got to give and take. Give and take.
I love that lesson because the other side of my brain, I'm a family law paralegal, and I hear this all day long, and I just want to tell them exactly what you just said. Maybe I'll just tell them to go read your story.
Yeah.
Read the story and then give the link to the video. Hey, listen to this lady.
You know, the reality is we don't. I've yet to meet one couple where at any point, neither one of them ever said, oh, I'm just done with this one. I mean, it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
But that's okay. The good thing is when we say, you know what, I can be mad at you, but I can learn to let it go and forgive and letting go of those grudges, which was the theme of the story, letting go of those things that we hold on to for no reason. I had a beta reader, a friend, a critique partner actually, used to be, she's not anymore, but one of the things that she said was, at the end of the story, you have to tell readers why there was the fight, the feud between the families. And she insisted I had to have that in there. She insisted the editor would want to know. And she insisted the readers would want to know. And the more I thought about it, and the more I just kept thinking, you know what? It doesn't matter. Because we all have those things that we hold on to something that I can't stand that person. 20 years later, we still can't stand that person, and we can't remember why. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to be near that person anymore. And we hold on to those things instead of saying, you know what, let it go. The reason doesn't matter, because most of the time, the reason is stupid. You know? You talk to my girl. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, you talked to her. Well, let's see. I was asking directions of where somebody went, and you assume the worst, and now we've been hating each other for 30 years. I mean, again, it's a stupid reason, but although, I mean, each of the families in their own minds felt like they had a justifiable reason. So,
I just had a conversation with someone today that I had a misunderstanding with, and I'm so grateful that she came to me because she said I was making up my own story in my mind about why you said this. And that was a powerful reminder, but I was just thankful that she didn't let it keep going, you know?
Right. That's, you know, one of the things as a writer, my objective as a writer is, if my characters don't have a justifiable reason not to be honest with them, then they're just going to be honest with them. Because what is the point? I mean, it frustrates me. I had this conversation with my friend Cindy, because she's a big Harry Potter fan, and I said it frustrated me through all of these story after story after story. I kept thinking, why didn't Dumbledore just tell Harry Potter? No offense to any people who do not like Harry Potter. But I'm thinking, I better put that in there, caveat. But why didn't Dumbledore just tell Harry? Why didn't Snape tell Harry the truth? You know, all these different adults in the story who should know better, who should just say, this is a 13-year-old kid. I just need to tell him the truth of what's going on, but they didn't. And so, I mean, in Dumbledore's mind at the end of the series, he's like, yeah, you're right. I really probably should have told you. I didn't think at the time you could handle the truth. And so that's why I sit and think, as characters in a story, as an author, as I'm crafting a story, if my characters don't have a reason, an honest to good reason not to tell the truth, then let them just tell the truth. Because the truth is far more powerful, and at times the truth is also more hurtful. And so it's how, as an author, can I use that to my advantage? And so there's that guilt that Coral had of, you know what, I should have. Because legally, I'm about to say Garrett, Jack had grounds legally to annul the marriage just because Coral had not confessed ahead of time that she was deaf. because back in that time period, if you had a medical condition, if you had epilepsy, if you had, whatever medical condition, if the girl was pregnant and did not tell the guy, then the guy would have grounds for a divorce, even if he was the one who got her pregnant. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
There were a lot of rights, though, that belonged to the men then that didn't belong to the women either. We find that in our research a ton.
Oh, yeah. And that's why, put a woman in a situation where, now what's she going to do? And so I wanted Coral to have that, to be that type of person who I have been a person who's been in bondage to bitterness and into hatred and into feeling crappy about myself. And she has to sit and say, I don't want to be that anymore. I want to be different, and God's doing a work in my life, and so how can I be a different person? And now I'm in a situation where I'm married to this guy. I didn't want this to happen. My life is now not going where I wanted it to, but do I choose to sit and bemoan my circumstances, to complain about my circumstances, or to say, you know what, I'm just going to make the best of it? And so that's part of her character and who she is. I'm going to choose to be a person who makes the best of it. So.
What other thoughts and questions do you have?
I sound really dumb when I asked this, because I think I was a little sleepy when I read the story. What was the fascination that Coral had with Cleveland? Where did that come from?
She wanted to have somewhere to go to. And so as an author, I like to have my characters have a story goal. This is something tangible that I want. So I was trying to figure out where would be somebody. She wanted to get far enough away that would be, not just going to St. Louis or Kansas City. That's not far enough. But she wanted to get somewhere further. Well, she had read somewhere about how Cleveland had this 9-story shopping mall called the Arcade. So when I found out about the Arcade and its existence there in Cleveland, just a little bit of research, I just thought, ooh, I want to move to Cleveland. And so I thought, well, okay, I want to go where there's a shopping mall, especially if I've been living in this small town with, a couple of thousand people. It's not a very big town, and I want something better in life. And so Cleveland became that manifestation of, I'm going to go here, and her goal. It has a shopping mall.
I think something about they have the opera there too.
Yes, and street cars and electricity. I love electricity.
Yeah.
Oops, there we go. Nope. Okay. I can see the store when they're down, but when I click on them, they go dark. So I'm gonna. There we go. Now we're back.
They're kind of blurry to me.
Yeah.
Blurry.
Sometimes the internet fluctuates, and things like that. So we just have to go on. One of the things that fascinated me about the story was that you brought up the idea of electricity, and it was interesting because in Helena, Montana, electricity existed already in 1889. So here we are in 1900 through 1904 in your story, and there wasn't electricity in that town yet. So it showed a lot of variety of what's happening in the country of that current time. That was interesting.
There's a lot of details. When I initially planned the story, I knew I wanted it to be in Kansas, and my intention was it to be in El Dorado, Kansas. And so my older sister lives in Wichita, so I decided to make a trip. It's not that far. I can drive it. It's under my 4-hour limit, and well, if it's over 4 hours, I don't want to drive. I got to have a sleep, and you can't sleep if you're driving. Really? So I can drive for 4 hours before I basically go to sleep at the wheel. And so we went to Wichita, and I met at the the library, the historical museum, and then I went to the library and did a little research. And the more I learned about the area where I wanted to set my story, my sister said, "Really? Why? It smells like pigs there." And I thought, yeah, I don't want to write about someplace that today smells like pigs, even if last, 100 years ago it didn't. So then we ended up going to, she helped me find another book there at the library. So we ended up deciding on Wathena. And once I got up, we went to Topeka, the state capital. We went to Kansas State University, and they were so helpful there. And I got to use their little machine, when you digitally scan books. I was scanning books and pictures. I didn't even need those books, those pictures that I was scanning, but I had so much fun with that machine, I couldn't stop. I just couldn't. And so I was just scanning things and emailing pictures to myself. It was great. And then we stopped at Kansas State University and saw her daughter, and we had this wonderful trip looking around, and I was determined. I mean, I wanted to find, I have this, which is can't really see it very well, but it's a map of Doniphan County where it was set. And then I actually found a street map of Wathena back in that time period, and it was finding all those little historical details about trees and orchards and the town and all of that stuff that I thought, ooh, I just love this. And so yeah, about 10% of all the interesting things I learned, only about 10% went into the book, which is usually what happens. But that was my research trip, and everything was tax deductible. So every town we went to, I went and got me a coffee. I had a lot of coffee. And then we went to the Bacon Fest that they had, Wichita's Bacon Fest, and there was bacon everywhere. And it was awesome, and I might have eaten too much. But it was bacon, never too much. And so that was great. But I loved, the more I learned about Wichita, and specifically because I got to researching that too, that I thought, wow, there's a lot of interesting things to me here about Kansas that I could set stories, which is why my sunflower story that is published today, 6 Little Sunflowers, available on Amazon, Kindle, I set that in Wichita because to me, Wichita is fascinating. So when I have people say, well, why don't you write something in Oklahoma? Like, I live here. There's nothing fascinating. See, Catherine knows. She lives up in Tulsa, the only pretty part of the state. And there's nothing interesting here. They have trees up there. Where I live, we don't have trees. We have things that like this. And they call them trees, not trees.
That's not
so. Northwest Indiana either. Yeah. There's not much here. We're close to Chicago, but that's about it. That's good.
But don't you have a lot of windmills over there?
Not too far from us, we do. The modern, the wind farm windmills, yes. It is kind of, yes, it is a little bit surreal. It feels like you're a little bit like you're on another planet when you approach them, but that's about it.
My grandmother, my mom's side of the family, lives in South Dakota, so we would drive from Oklahoma. Now, I would always skip driving through Oklahoma because that was my sleeping time, and I wasn't driving. My parents were driving. And then older, I'd make somebody else drive because it was the morning. I've got to have my nap. So we'd drive through Oklahoma. We'd get into Kansas. We'd stop somewhere at this place in Topeka, or Topeka. I went blank on the place. And we'd have our lunch. And then at that point, I'm just sitting there thinking, there's nothing here to look at. So I'd start praying, please, Jesus, give me something to look at. And there would be cornfields. I'm thinking, cornfields? Ugh, please, Jesus, give me something besides cornfields. And what is it? Pig farms. Pig farms. And then it was, please, Jesus, give me something else besides pig farms. And then it would be corn. And by that point, I'm happy it's corn. And then there would be cows. South Dakota. But then we'd have the whole trip again coming back because there's the pig farms in Nebraska, which is why I don't have any stories set in Nebraska.
What other thoughts and questions do y'all have?
I just have one more. Is most of what you write historical? Because it sounds like you really enjoy the research part of it.
You know, it is. Last year I had an idea about doing a serial story in which it's set. Each author takes a different chapter. So we don't pre-plan it. Just one author writes the first chapter, then the next author gets the next chapter, and we just start going on. And so I thought, well, that would be fun to do. I'll start it off because that's the easy part. Every story that I kept coming across that I had in my little slush pile of potential ideas, that of the first chapters already written, I just kept saying, oh, that's really too good. I got to finish that story. Oh, that one's a good one. I got to finish that story. And so the only thing I had was a contemporary. And so I thought, well, I only have one chapter. So I took that, and then I enlisted some author friends that I have. And I asked Angie, but she was swamped under, so she couldn't do it. But we ended up writing it's 15 chapters. It is a contemporary. It's a contemporary with a little bit of suspense elements to it. It's called Path to Love, and it's available. It's a free download on Amazon, and it has a spiritual thread in it. So it's an inspirational novel, but it's contemporary. And I have to say, I wrote the first chapter, which it was already written, but then I had to write the last chapter. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Right. Because I think, what shoes do they wear? Well, I don't know what kind of shoes they wear. What clothes? I don't know what clothes. Just, it was stressful for me. Whereas a historical, I could sit and go, oh, I can pick that. So I have a contemporary YA. It's a dystopian that I've started. I have about 3 chapters written, and then I got stuck because it's contemporary-ish, and I keep thinking, well, what kind of clothes do they wear? What food do they eat? I don't know. So contemporary people are far more complex than historical ones are, at least my thinking. So they're all historicals. In fact, today, I don't think I've mentioned this, so I probably should. My newest story, 6 Little Sunflowers, has released. It is available at Amazon, but it is a historical, and it is the 11th story that I've had published. And it again, it's just that historical time period. That there's a gallantry that I like in characters that have that moral code, that moral. We're going to choose to do the right thing, even if nobody's around to see me do it. And I like that. Whereas it's just harder today.
Yeah.
Issues to deal with.
I think that it might seem like that to us, but if we lived back then, it might seem less like that. You know what I mean? It's like we can aggrandize something that's in the past, or we have this golden cloud around it where it's this perfect utopia the way it was. And
right.
But it is a way for us as authors to put things together and say, we need to get back to some of these more pure, more clear concepts of living and things like that. I think there's a higher expectation for it than there is now.
Well, there was one of the things in the story that I knew what was going to happen in All's Fair. I knew how it began. I knew they got married, and then I was sitting there thinking, I know he has the choice. Do we do the annulment or do we not? So I knew that. But then I kept thinking, what would add some conflict to that? So I have the Emily Post etiquette book, and I just started reading through that, and the stuff about, well, after you get engaged, people start calling on you, and then they start bringing you gifts, engagement gifts, and stuff, and I thought, oh, I can use these historical behaviors, etiquette action, and use those to my advantage to add conflict to the story. Because now, how do you call off an engagement when you've got 200 gifts in your dining room? Return them all, and a dog.
And a dog.
Dog. Who took the dog? Where did it go? It disappeared. Dog.
So, what other thoughts and questions do you ladies have? We're coming to the end of our time.
I think that's it for us right now. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina, do you have a last word you want to share?
Well, there are different stories that I write. That some of them have more of a spiritual point than some of them have issues. And the other day I was watching American Idol with my husband and the kids, and Kelly Clarkson was singing, and she was talking, singing the song Piece by Piece. And afterward, I was talking to my husband, and I said, what makes that song powerful is the fact that when she wrote those things, that was her. And it's not just a matter of writing her pain, her issues, her struggle, and putting it in that song. It's being brave enough to then share it with people. And so there's issues, in this story, both with Jack and with Coral at different times in their lives. They both dealt with that. How am I going to let go of, with Jack, this anger that I've had, and with Coral, the anger and bitterness, and how do I let that go and let God make a difference in my life? And so there's that point, and it's not the verse that I used in the book, but I do in a way quote the verse in the story, and it's Colossians 1:22 about how we have been made holy and blameless and beyond reproach, because that's the difference that God makes in our life, because God changes us. And we sit there and we think, well, I can make myself a better person, or I can help my husband make himself a better person. But the reality is it's not. We can try as best we can, but who truly makes a difference in our life it's God making that difference. And I wanted to not have characters who had to come to that realization throughout the story, but who had already realized that, and now they're living it, and the struggle they have with people in their lives who say, yeah, I don't, you're still who you are, who I see you, who you are. So with that story, that was that theme that I'm a new person, God has changed me, and now where do I go from here, is something that I hope that readers, as they go through that where are you and in your life, and do you view yourself as a sinner saved by grace, or do you view yourself as, I am a saint, I am made holy and blameless and beyond reproach, because that's how God sees me. And when you have that identity, which is like what Coral and Jack had, that identity that I have been made new, and I'm preaching right now, but I have been made new, then there's a freedom that you have in letting Christ live in your life. And so that was one of the, what, I do want to say one more thing. When I was listening to some of the other interviews, the authors were talking about books that these are the genres that I read, and these are the authors who I love. And I remember thinking, oh, please, Jesus, please don't let them ask me that question, because I'll start panicking and think, oh no, you're putting me on the spot. Because for years, as a fiction author, I heard other fiction authors say, best-selling, multi-published ones, you read what you write. You read it. You read it. So I'm thinking, I'm going to read every historical author who writes in the genre that, I have to read every Christian inspirational romance author. And it was just this panicking, because I kept thinking, I can't read all those. I have TV to watch. I can't read a book all the time. I'm saying that. Oh my goodness. I am saying that to a book club. Ignore that. Just delete that past. That's not what I said. And so I kept thinking, I've got, what is it? And I realized I had been holding myself in thinking that I'm not being the best fiction writer I can be, which I may not be. But the truth is, I thought I wasn't doing that because I wasn't reading all of these authors. I mean, I've read Kathleen, I've read Angie, and I've read Lisa Carter. Oh my goodness, her Under the Turquoise Sky, love the book. But other than that, if I have to sit and think, okay, how many other fiction inspirational authors that I've read, I don't want to confess to how many I've read, because instead I read nonfiction. And that's one of the things that it captivates me as an author, is when I get that book that I sit and think, oh, this is good. Oh, God, you're just pointing out all my flaws. I don't need to see this right now, but I can put it in a book. And if I can put my flaws in a book, this will be awesome. Again, I'm not liking what I'm sounding here. Okay, so I did bring some, like, for example, several years ago, my sister wanted Wild at Heart by John Eldridge for Christmas. And I thought, that's a man book? And she goes, no, it's really good. I have read this book probably 6 times, probably 6 times since I bought it. It's my one book was marked up so much that somebody else took it. One of my kids took it and said, oh, I'm just going to take this one because it's already got the things highlighted that I need to pay attention to. So I have that one. And then when I was writing All's Fair, one of the books that I had just finished reading was this one by Let's All Be Brave by Annie Down. And for me, that was a big issue about how am I going to let my own fears hold me back from doing something that, I mean, not like a speaking thing, but it's how's it going to hold me back from, being honest with somebody and saying, hey, you really hurt my feelings when you said that. Or, you know what, no, I don't want to help you with that thing. And so learning how to be brave for that, this is a great book. And then obviously Captivating. I own every book they've written. And I think I've read all of them except for one more than once, because it's just, my one copy was so messed up of Captivating, I had to order another one, which is not good, but I don't like to break the binding. And so I have that one. But what I just finished, and it's, if you read 6 Little Sunflowers, then you will see that this book right here, Scary Close by Donald Miller. I have highlighted things in this. I read it out of order. I just sat there going, oh, yikes. I need to be a scary close person. I need to be that person who can be honest and open, and how am I going to be that? But not just me. It's as an author, how do I get my characters who sit there and go, oh, I need to learn this lesson. And so I figure for all of the people who don't read nonfiction, if I can take the things that I learned from it, that touched my heart, that changed me, that made a difference in my life, and I can put that in a story that I don't want to preach at you, although I did earlier anyway, but I want that in there so that here's a lesson, and let's see if God is going to just take that and sow that seed in your life and whatever's going to work on you. And I probably at the end of every book should make a list of the nonfictions that I read while I was writing those, because those are the things the books that change my life. Those are the books that changed my life. I'd love for somebody to say, in my book changed their life. I really don't expect my book to change your life. I just expect God to change your life. And whether you get that out of a fiction book, you get that out of a nonfiction book, you get that out of watching an episode of Walking Dead, I don't care. As long as God's doing a work in your life and who you are today is a better person than you were yesterday, that as an author, that's the thing that matters to me. So I guess you're welcome.
We need to wrap it up so the ladies there are able to get home and get dinner and things like that. But I loved what you had to say, and I just want to thank you for being with us, and thank you to the Vine for hosting our group with you and having a book club with us. So thank you, Gina.
I'm coming for you, not myself.
And I'd like to introduce Kathleen again. She's going to be with us next week. And her novella is called The Colorado Coincidence. So as we are going into next week, Kathleen will be our special guest. So thank you again. And in order for this to go into the recording mode over on YouTube, I'll need to take us offline. Is there anything you there in the Vine in Dyer, Indiana would like to share with us before we go?
I don't think so. I think we're just so happy to be doing this with you, and we're looking forward to Kathleen's story next week, and we'll see you then.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to share this again. This has all been from the Lassoed by Marriage Romance Collection, published by Barber, and we are so proud and excited and honored to be a part of this book and a part of your lives. So thank you, and we will see you next week. Yay!
Yeah.